What's up, ladies and gentlemen, it's Aerons, and I'm back to discuss Impact Wrestling on the Wrestle Plug YouTube channel. Now, obviously, some of the storylines don't always hit for me. Coming out of Sacrifice, we have new champions, and we started off with the new tag team champions, Finjuice facing Triple XL. Decent enough match, just a good showcase of what the boys can do. Obviously, you're expecting Good Brother shenanigans, and you got those. Good Brothers come down and go, yo, where's our tag team title rematch, you fucking little shitbags? And at which point they're like, yeah, you can wait a month, we're going back to Japan. See ya. And it was interesting because from my perspective, I didn't really have a problem with it. I'm sure that the people who delve super deep into this stuff will look at it and say, oh, well, fucking, they're taking the belts abroad and blah, blah, blah. It's funny, isn't it, how different horses are for different courses. If this was WWE, I imagine people would be like, oh, fuck's sake, they're taking the belts off of TV. Oh, they're not defending them. Oh, they're not proper champions. Oh, put the belts on people who want to work every single week there. But Impact has the luxury, I suppose, of being a bit different. And of course, with the scheduled tapings they have as well, that makes it a little bit easier. But obviously, the Good Brothers will get their rematch, courtesy of Scott D'Amore, at Rebellion against Finjuice. And that automatically makes Rebellion a must-see show, because we already know that the main event is going to be Kenny Omega versus Rich Swan. And that should be pretty decent as well. Some good stuff in the middle as well. Not everything, like I say, is to my taste. Can do without Violent by Design growing again with more riffraff. Is it cool that Rhino's joined Violent by Design? It made for a good moment of Sacrifice, but overall, I don't really care. This faction just feels like 4 different guys that have just been thrown together because they've got nothing else for them to do. Jake Something's got Chris Sabin and James Storm at ringside for him, but this match was over before it really began, turned into a schmoz, and boom, Rhino hits a spear. Great. Don't really care whatsoever. Gore, excuse me. Don't want to get gored out of my boots. Was really happy to see the Michigan boys doing well. We just had Tommy Vendetta on the podcast, who knows these guys very well. And it was very cool listening to him talk about them, and obviously got nothing but respect for them. But from a booking standpoint, it's just a bit boring. I don't really give a toss. I feel that I've mentioned quite a few times, actually, Sami Callahan, who I'm going to talk about ad nauseum at the end of this podcast, has been in a state of flux up until now, and he needed something to really get him motivated again, get him back into the groove of where we consider him to be, which is one of the best heels in the company. Eric Young feels like he's now going through that state of flux where he's just kind of hovering around, trying to put some other guys over, but they're not really getting over, and it kind of feels like maybe it's going to lead to Heath Slater coming back and then having a rivalry with Rhino. No idea. Not bothered, to be honest. I feel like Jake Something could be used a lot more here as well. He feels like he could be a legitimate contender. We saw what he could do against Moose. Let's see him do something else. Rohit Raju is now excommunicated from his former hitman, Mahabali Shera. Again, decent enough match. Love Rohit Raju. This is definitely not Rohit Raju's alley. This is definitely not his MO when it comes to wrestling, because you're so used to seeing him wrestle X Division guys, but he got a decent match out of Shera. I feel like Shera's still a little bit rough around the edges, a little bit green, but he's got great potential and he looks incredible. What a physique. Like, you know, what? Just look at the size of him. As a megalomaniac owner might say on a different broadcast. But it was fine. It was what it was. And Rohit Raju, the great thing about his matches is they always mean something, and even though this may not have been to everybody's cup of tea and they may have fast forwarded for whatever reason, what I liked about it was the fact that he sold the offense the right way, and then he beat him the way you would expect a guy who's much smaller in stature and character as he's presented to beat him, and I thought that was excellent. Rohit Raju is fucking phenomenal. I really feel this guy makes up what is the spine of Impact Wrestling, and the guys who truly work. I'm talking about the guys like Josh Alexander, TJP, mostly the X Division if I'm being honest, but he is fantastic and he really helps add something to the product, so I appreciate that. The women's match was a bit clusterfucky for me. I thought it was fine. They basically got every single knockout and chucked them into a big old massive grand scale tag team match. The problem with this match wasn't that it was terrible. I actually thought it was fine. There were some great moves all around, but it also highlighted some discrepancies in terms of how certain individuals work in the company. As you know, I'm nothing if I'm not honest on this podcast, and I do tend to lean very heavily towards a bias for Impact Wrestling because I feel like it gets a bad rap, but I'm still going to point out critiques if I feel like I have them. And I must admit, I feel like some of the women in this division are much, much, much worse than others. I do believe that to be the case. I don't think anyone's a terrible wrestler. The case in point for me is the fact that when certain wrestlers got in the ring during this match, it just looked like a much better caliber match. Obviously, when Jordan Grace was in the ring and Deonna Purrazzo, those are the kind of talents who really are fantastic. I also feel that Jessica Havoc and Nevaeh actually are woefully underrated in terms of what they can do when they were in the ring. It really felt more physical and more realistic, and I appreciated that. I like Kimberly, but I felt that she was maybe a step behind, although she did take a right shellac in this match, and I've got to give her credit for that. Jazz, you kind of know what you're getting at this point as a veteran, just throwing a few hands. I love Jazz, obviously. Got nothing but respect and love for Jazz, but I also feel at this point that she's kind of there for presence and for marquee value more than anything else, because she's very kick punchy now, although I still like the submission finisher, to be fair. And it is Jazz, to be honest, who came out of this on the right side of things. But looking at it from a positive aspect, each woman very much gave something to the match which helped move it along. You know, Alicia Edwards had this really nice little rivalry going on with Tenille Dashwood, who I still think is awful in this gimmick and should be doing so much more. Could do without Caleb with a K at ringside. I find him insufferable and boring, and I know that's his job, but at the same time, it's just go away heat for me. I'm just not bothered. A shame, really, because from what I hear, he's actually a world-class wrestler and somebody who can do a lot of things. I've seen a little bit of his stuff from Ring of Honor, but not enough to really make a critique on his in-ring ability. But like I say, it was just clusterfucky, and a lot of the people that you would want to get over in this match kind of felt like afterthoughts. You know, the women's champion, again, the Knockouts champion, she was good when she was in the ring, but she didn't really do a great deal in the match overall. ODB was good fun, really like her. Susan is utterly pointless. The highlight of the match for her was having her phone taken by Caleb because he was furious that she was also recording the match. You know, some of it hits, some of it doesn't. But all in all, the faces get a big win, and it's a nice showing of what the Knockouts can do. And it's also nice to see pretty much every knockout being used on this show, because that's something that I can get on at them about. I feel like they've got a great women's division, but they don't utilise it well enough for my money. So it is what it is. But it was okay. It wasn't offensive. Just wasn't my cup of tea. We had a few backstage things going on. They were hyping Hardcore Justice. Tommy Dreamer seemed to take umbrage with Scott D'Amore because the tag team titles were now going over to Japan. So Scott D'Amore was like, do you know what, mate? We can't just run this into the ground like you and your good buddy Paul Lee did. I was like, ooh, shade. Absolute shade, sir. But he also says, you know what, Tommy Dreamer? Hardcore is your thing. Hardcore Justice is coming up as the next Impact Plus special pay-per-view, so you can book it. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got a card right here on this receipt or whatever. I was like, okay, cool. Apparently Tommy Dreamer is going to be commissioner for a night for Hardcore Justice. So I'm expecting that to be less storyline driven and more just some interesting matches. So I'm expecting guys like Eddie Edwards, Sami Callahan, those kind of guys to really feature prominently on this card, because it is, you know, hardcore, extreme, violent sort of style stuff. I'd expect Violent by Design to do quite well at this show as well, if they're going to live up to their name. The X Division champion was backstage. A little bit disappointing that we didn't get to see the brand new X Division champion wrestle. Ace Austin, of course, giving Gia Miller a bit of the business as well, which I thought was very funny. Then, of course, contenders tip up. Chris Bay rocks up. Oi! I beat you last week. Where's my title shot? Josh Alexander comes along and says, I've beaten both you tools. Where's my title shot? And then TJP comes over and he goes, excuse me, Daddy's here now, so kids, get out of the way. I thought it was quite good. He's got such a great presence, a little bit of arrogance about him, but he's quite likeable as well. I really like TJP, actually. I think he's definitely one of the biggest standouts. He's just so fucking good at everything he does. And obviously, man crush moment, Josh Alexander. Give the man his title shot now. Give me what I want. Josh Alexander has to win the X Division title at some point, and hopefully he's going to be relentless until he gets it. And my God, he is looking fresh. Put the X Division on every week, because they're fucking amazing. Simple as that. It should be mandatory. We should have X Division action every single week without fail, because that is what this company and that is what this brand has always been built upon. Now, before I get to the main event, Rich Swan obviously came out looking very cool as the double champ. Champ Swan, baby. He comes out with his TNA Championship and, of course, the Impact Heavyweight Championship, which have now merged to make him the undisputed Impact Heavyweight Champion. I can see why they're keeping both the belts around, though, because obviously that douchebag on Wednesday night is going to come and collect at some point. And, of course, it wasn't long before the Invisible Hand, interesting name, Don Callis comes out and, to be fair, cuts an excellent promo. Don Callis bias has to be with Kenny Omega, because Kenny Omega is awful at cutting promos. I'm so sick and tired of people telling me that he's wickedly charismatic. He is not. He has the charisma of a stale donut, as far as I'm concerned. But Don Callis is phenomenal on the microphone. Love his cadence, love his attitude, love the fact that he kind of wanted to get into Rich Swan's head and say, you know, it's great that you won the title, and, you know, I'm proud of you because ultimately I'm an Impact man and I helped run this show and I love what you've done. But when it comes down to it, you can't beat Kenny Omega, you know, and you got beaten at Hard to Kill by Kenny Omega. And I hope so much that this leads to Rich Swan proving everyone wrong and beating Kenny Omega at Rebellion, because I just don't think Kenny Omega having the Impact Championship is good for business, particularly if he's not going to appear on the show, which he doesn't seem to be doing, which is fine. If he doesn't want to, that's absolutely fine. But when you are supposed to be, you know, the big kind of invading champion from another product, it would be nice to see you more than once. He has only turned up once on actual Impact programming, as opposed to a pre-taping or sitting on a fucking bus, and that was, of course, for Hard to Kill, the actual match, which was excellent, to be fair. Never had a problem with Kenny Omega in ring, and I imagine him and Rich Swan will have a world-class match. But I think it would make a hell of a statement, and it would help solidify Impact a little bit more if their champion retained. Even if you have to use shenanigans, doesn't matter. I feel that Impact needs the rub here. And also, you want to drive the traffic towards Impact, not the other way around. So the best way to do this is by putting Kenny Omega on this product, putting Don Callis on this product more, even though it is technically his product anyway. You know, you've got the Good Brothers doing the crossover, but the great thing about the Good Brothers is, you know, they're turning up every week on Impact. It's a small gripe, but I would like to see Kenny Omega turn up on the TV products a little bit more. I know people say, yeah, well, it's TV tapings and all that nonsense, but, you know, all he had to do was run down or maybe square up to Rich Swan himself. And obviously there's time before Rebellion, so it'd be interesting to see whether they actually do pull the trigger on that. The V trigger. Sorry, that's my shit joke for the day. Now, the main event was fucking amazing. Trey Miguel versus Sami Callahan. Finally, these two highly combustible elements collide, and they put on a match of the year candidate. There you go, I said it. This is what annoys me about Impact not getting the love and respect it deserves. You people are genuinely missing out on world-class wrestling. Trey Miguel is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Sami Callahan, when he's motivated, is one of the best characters in the world. His entrance is fucking phenomenal. His cadence. The way he conveys himself psychologically in the ring as well is second to none. He is actually amazing. And I love this match. It was hard-hitting. It was physical. And we saw spots that we'd never seen before. The slingshot on the outside was just ridiculous. But it was the build-up to it. And it had all the psychological elements I want from my match. I don't just want a load of moves. And I hate to harp on about it, but there are a lot of people, not just on AEW to be fair, loads of different products, where they just kind of do matches where it's just a load of moves and then the match ends. And you think, that was great and it was a good spectacle, but I want more to my matches. I want storytelling. I want something a little bit more physical, a little bit more violent, a little bit more real. And these boys delivered that, and they delivered it in spades. Fucking world class. This is the Sami Callahan that I believe is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Utterly amazing. The way he worked towards the ankle all the time, the way he was consistently targeting Trey Miguel, picking him apart as an assassin should do. He's very much Impact's answer to Randy Orton, but with a lot more interest and a lot more, shall we say, better verbiage for my money. I just think that he's somebody who does that character a lot better. I think he's the best in the world at that character. I really do. I love this. Trey Miguel's selling was fantastic. Really made you feel that he was in jeopardy a lot, that he was genuinely in pain. And Sami Callahan, of course, the whole idea of this rivalry has been, you're a great athlete, but you don't have passion. You don't have pride. You will run when things get tough. And that was the idea of this match. He was testing him to see how far he would go. What would Trey Miguel be able to do? Would he buckle under the pressure of what Sami Callahan could do to him? And it was perfectly told psychology. This is 101 how wrestling should be done. And for me, it's by far and away one of the better matches I've seen this year. I thought it was utterly phenomenal. And they got plenty of time as well, which was lovely. It wasn't just a quick 5-10 minute main event, which Impact can be prone to do sometimes on such a short format. No, they gave these guys plenty of time. And I'm glad some of the other matches were a little bit shorter, a little bit throwaway, because it afforded these guys the opportunity to show what they could do. This was a pay-per-view level main event worthy match. I have to say, one thing I really love about Impact Wrestling is that they do build towards their pay-per-views. So you feel like you have to watch them to truly see the big moments. Case in point, this weekend, if you missed out on Sacrifice, you missed out on new champions being crowned. And you missed out on a couple of very interesting turns as well and character developments. But they still give you something that truly could be pay-per-view worthy on a show like this. Ultimately, the point here is that Impact gives you great main event wrestling every single week, but it doesn't feel like it takes anything away from the pay-per-views, and that's very important. These guys were fucking fantastic, and it's Sami Callahan, actually, that ultimately comes out with the win after a vicious and violent package pile driver, because Brian Hebner's in the way of Trey Miguel, who's looking to finish the match. And of course, this is great, because not only is it a continuation of the storyline, it means we're going to get even more violent, more interesting matches later down the line, you would hope. And of course, it develops a storyline. Hey, look, Trey Miguel lost because he doesn't have what it takes. And are we going to see a evolution of what Trey Miguel can do in the ring? Because he's come back in the best shape of his career. He's looking more jacked. He's looking more vicious. And hopefully, this rivalry with Sami Callahan is going to benefit both of them spectacularly. Because not only do you have Sami Callahan now finally back in the sort of position you would expect him to be in as a main event level threat, but you also have Trey Miguel going from great, fantastic athlete in the X division to all-round, overall, very psychologically interesting talent. I'm emotionally invested even more in both of these guys, and that's credit to their incredible match. Great show, to be fair. Great show. Like I say, not everything's to my cup of tea. Don't really care about Jake something versus Rhino if it's going to be 2 minutes long. Didn't really care overall for the Knockouts match, even though it had some good stuff. But all in all, I didn't hate anything at all. I felt it all was very well delivered. It had excellent pacing, and the main event in particular was world class. And if there's one thing you go back and watch from this show, if you watch this YouTube channel and think, do you know what? I agree with that fat bastard. I'm going to go and watch a little bit of Impact Wrestling. Check out that main event. Seriously. Trey Miguel versus Sami Callahan was an absolute world beater and a really good one-on-one example of how you do emotional investment and psychology in professional wrestling today. I've been Aerons. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, you can always grab a t-shirt at wrestleplug.bigcartel.com and, of course, prowrestlingtees.com/wrestleplug. And I will see you very soon for more content from this channel and, of course, the WrestlePlug podcast.